So I'm here to talk about concussions and negotiating while concussed. As a note, I do currently have a concussion. I got hit in the head in a sports injury just over a year ago. That was my 6th concussion, which sounds horrible and feels just about as bad, but it leads to all kinds of very difficult symptoms that really make things like participating fully in a negotiation very, very difficult, if impossible, or if not impossible. That's how you phrase that. One of those symptoms is having difficulty phrasing things correctly, oddly enough, but concentration is particularly difficult. Staying focused for long periods of time, very, very difficult. I have had a lot of headaches, lots of light sensitivity and noise sensitivity, and because my injury came from a big sports accident, I also came away with pretty severe neck pain and back pain from the associated whiplash. There are about 1 million people in Canada at any given time dealing with similar kinds of symptoms from concussions. So you're likely to be working with someone who's having similar kinds of problems of varying levels at any given time. So what I have are just a few suggestions for accommodations that could be made that can make working and dealing with this kind of injury a lot easier. So some of that is physical stuff in the room. If you're meeting with someone who has a concussion, thinking about making sure there aren't any flickering, terrible fluorescent lights or really, really bright light sources that are going to be in their eyes the whole time can really limit that can really limit their ability to work. If they also have back pain like what I have, it's very important to look about and see what the chair's situation is. Make sure there's comfortable seating and support for backs. It's also important to make sure that you're setting things up with the ability to take a lot of breaks and potentially not run as long as you might want to, because you will run up against that wall of symptoms very, very hard and very, very early if you just try and force your way through. That also means that if you're wanting to end a session with a decision made, that might not work out well if they've been putting all of their energy into thinking really hard or focusing for even just a couple of hours. That last 15 minutes of trying to get everyone to kind of agree on what was decided there might be just too much. So being ready to take a break and come back, maybe even overnight, is very important before you make a final call or agree that you've agreed. One of the things that helps to make those decisions is sometimes having something written down, like I do here, notes about what was talked about, notes about what still needs to be talked about, or how I felt about a particular moment. There are a lot of situations I know in different mediation situations or other kinds of negotiations where you're not supposed to keep notes, but if you're dealing with a brain injury, your memory may not be able to hold on to, in particular, a lot of the details. So being able to have something that you can go back and look at, okay, I know what this says, is very, very useful, very, very valuable. So finding ways to allow for that is very important. Okay, sorry. I don't know. There's also difficulty sometimes starting early. I know that I have experienced a lot of sundowning, so that which is very much talked about mostly through dementia, illnesses like that, but does affect people with brain injuries as well very much. So end of day decisions and end of day meetings, just not a good choice. And I know that we're running up on the end of here, but if you'd like to ask me about my coffee, I'd love to tell you some more about that. There's quite a lot of things. example of setting you up. Anyone have any questions?
I'd like to know more about the coffee.
You'd like to know more about coffee? Well, this is very interesting. Caffeine actually can help deal with a lot of the headaches and fogginess that comes on. So having caffeine available is very, very useful, but also remembering how caffeine works on the system. If you're not drinking the coffee, but someone else is drinking 6 or 7 cups, remember you're going to need bathroom breaks like really regularly, and you shouldn't force that person to constantly go, all right, another one please, could we actually do this again? Is just very uncomfortable and disempowering to be the one constantly having to ask to take a break. So putting that into your design for the day is very, very important. Yeah.
So if you're thinking about needing to track yourself, notes that you're taking, is that harder or easier than maybe like the facilitator or mediator tracking on a board, kind of where you're at, and what kind of tracking is probably the most useful?
Different people will probably have different feelings about that. Both are valuable because they're things that you can look at again. If they're on a board, you won't be able to take them home and look at them again before you come back for any secondary or tertiary meeting. So for me, I like to have something that I've written down that I can go back and look at before I come back in. But that's how I feel. Other people might not need that. Yes, Mark.
What's the recommended treatment for recovery from concussion now for 2 different schools of
There's a lot of things, and a lot of things have worked for some people and not for others. There's a lot of disagreement is kind of the answer. Rest and not trying to force yourself into a lot of really hard thought situations is one of the only things everyone agrees on. Often when you're in a very symptomatic state, treating it like a migraine is often very helpful, since a lot of the symptoms are quite similar. Long term, it's a lot of rest and working up slowly until you're able to function again, if you're ever able to function normally again. Yeah. And quit cheerleading. That's everyone agrees. We all agree.